Hello, Frizzle friendlies! So, Billy Summers by Stephen King was the first Stephen King book I have ever read. I've been wanting to read a Stephen King book for many months now, and this one was new and everyone seemed to really like it, so I thought, this seems like a good place to start. Why not? Which just makes it even more disappointing that I really didn't overall like this one. And consequently, that has made me less excited to read more Stephen King, even though I know that out there is probably a Stephen King book that would be just right for me. So if you know which one that is, please let me know, because I want to read that one and not this one. So, Billy Summers, let's talk about that. So, let's talk about the plot structure and character-wise things that I didn't like, and then I will say the parts of the book that I did like, and then we will get into my main gripe that really soured me to the book, which was kind of the romance friendship between Billy and Alice. You ready? Let's go! Big idea plot of the book, Billy Summers. Billy Summers is an assassin for hire. He's really good at his job. He does a bunch of sniper shoots. And then he gets hired for a big money job, and he says, this is my last one, and then I'm retiring, which is how you know that it's gonna go bad. And part of this job is him going undercover for many months leading up to the kill so that people won't suspect him, etc., and he pretends to be a novel writer. Unbeknownst to the people who are hiring him, he's actually very smart and loves books and kind of wants to be a writer, so this all works out just fine for him. But here we come to the part of the book that wasn't super engaging to me, which was the pacing. There are some fight scenes in this book, and they are exciting, high stakes, but most of them are not. So we've got there the micro scene pacing, where there are very few scenes, I would say, that feel like they have real narrative tension in them. It's just kind of like, well, then he's doing this, and then he's doing this, and then he's partying with his neighbors, and then he's doing this, and then he's pulling off the kill, and then he gets away, and then he meets Alice, which does have some tension in the story, but we will get to that tension later. So on a micro scene level, I wasn't super engaged. Billy as a character was good, and I'll get more into that in the good section. But for the bad section, we also have the macro pacing of the entire book, which is the plot you think is happening for like the beginning of the book doesn't actually end up being the plot that happens for like the rest of the book. And though this was kind of foreshadowed and I could have predicted it, it also felt clunky. It felt like we were given one quest and then we're told, but it might go wrong, and then it didn't go wrong, and then afterwards we're given another quest that I didn't really care about. You know? And I think part of this is getting down to Billy's personality as a character. Because as I've been getting to know Billy, one of his character traits was not a thirst for vengeance and revenge. He seemed like the kind of guy who's just trying to move on and let begons be begons. But then, when he is double-crossed by everyone, he decides to go hunt them down action hero style. But part of me is saying, hey Billy, weren't you just going through all this character development, souring you even more and more to all this violence? Why would you decide to do this? Because at that point, I was rooting for him to give up, to say, oh, well, I got double-crossed, but I don't really need that money, because I felt like that would be the happy ending for him. So to have him take up this call to adventure for the second half of the book that I wished he had declined, it made me not care so hard to this whole quest of the revenge scheme. And then later we find out that it's actually like a justice killing in the very end. And here's another thing that could have gone in the good things category, but I feel like more belongs in the bad things category, which is the overall theming of good guys versus bad guys. Billy has a rule. He doesn't kill good guys. What determines a good guy and a bad guy? And part of this good-bad dichotomy is enforced by Billy's dumb self, which is the persona that he exudes around all the various underbelly people. He pretends to be a lot dumber than he actually is so that they all underestimate him. So when he's his dumb self, he's saying things like, I don't kill good guys, I only kill bad guys. But then even when he's not pretending to be stupid, he still clings to that simplistic, childish dialogue. Because in many definitions, Billy is a bad guy. He's an assassin. But then also, in other definitions, he's a good guy. He isn't trying to hurt people. He's just kind of making a living assassinating people, but he is helping out people when he can. And he himself has judged himself to be a bad guy, one who deserves to die. So in my opinion, an interesting thematic climax would have been him having to grow up a little and reject the dumb self dichotomy of good people, bad people, and realize that he can be a mix, and that doesn't mean that he deserves death. But I feel like this good-bad dichotomy was never really that questioned because Billy did die in the end, and also all of his antics kind of messed up Alice's life. It was already kind of getting messed up before he got there, but he certainly didn't help many things. And continuing on the vein of themes that I didn't feel like were explored enough to my satisfaction was like the theme that the story kind of tries to end on, which is after Billy dies, Alice finishes his autobiography for him. And she writes it so he lives in the end, because she wants to write a happy ending, and it's proposed that this happy ending that she wrote has value even though it's fictional. But I feel like the problem is that this theme didn't seem to really happen for any other chapter. It could have totally been interwoven in as Billy is writing his autobiography. He could have taken scenes and purposefully written them a little bit fictional to make them better, to make them more interesting. And then the entire book could have been exploring this idea of the value in a happy ending, even if that happy ending is fictional, which is just kind of ironic given that the book itself doesn't have a happy ending. Just saying. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too dumb to pick up on this book's beauty, but I think I've got too much pride in my heart to ever accept that I'm too dumb for something. Okay, moving on to things that I liked, because there are some. The normal narrative is in third person present, and the flashback autobiography is in first person past. And the effect of this is that the autobiography, at least to me, felt so much more real and grounded. And then the reality of the story felt so much more ethereal, like I was reading stage directions, you know? And I really appreciated that because I was along the ride for Billy. Because in the book, his normal life from a lot of the book is pretty boring. It's not what's really keeping his attention. What is keeping Billy's attention is writing this autobiography of all of these terrible things he's done before. So then also my experience as a reader is that those past things take up more of my attention, and it feels so ethereal and weird when we pull back into the present narrative. I also really liked the subplot where Billy was getting to know the neighborhood kids when he was pretending to be a writer. That was cute, and I wish we would have gotten more of that, and hopefully more impact on his character decisions. Because it was a little bit of regret that was propelling him, but I don't feel like it really changed anything, because he was already planning on getting out of the assassin business. Okay, now the thing that soured the story for me than anything else was the relationship between Billy and Alice. It turns out to be a romantic relationship, which is problematic because he's about twice her age-ish. He tells her he can leave, but also psychologically he's pretty much her captor for many chapters of this book. Bad look. And for pretty much all of this book, Alice is in not a very stable headspace. She's recently been assaulted. He rescued her. There's a lot, I feel like, of emotional manipulation going on in their relationship. So in the beginning, it was a little bit like a paternal relationship where he was taking care of her and she was appreciating that care, which could have been a really good and interesting relationship to explore, especially in contrast to the actual little kids that he was befriending as his neighbors. But then as their relationship goes on, the sexual tension gets higher until they are kissing each other and declaring love. There had to be a choice here, where either their relationship is paternal or their relationship is romantic. Preferably, if it was a romantic relationship, their ages would have been smushed a little closer together, but then there's still the whole psychological power gap between them, as he being her captor and rescuer and everything. I could have enjoyed either one of those relationships. Having half of both just made me want to root for them to break up completely, because it didn't feel wholesome for either of them, but especially Alice. Because as aforementioned, she was going through a lot of stuff emotionally, and she doesn't need this in her life, especially traveling with a wanted hitman. Yep, that's gonna make her life more complicated. I gave it 2 stars because it wasn't completely unentertaining, and there were some interesting concepts in there. I wish those had just been better utilized. Even the relationship between Billy and Alice was interesting. It was just not a good interesting for characters that I could root for. It was more like characters that I would get progressively more annoyed with. Anyway, if you made it to the end of the video, comment with a gun emoji and let me know what you think of this book and other Stephen King-y stuff. Thanks for watching!